Lucas Archer. Sarah sat on the couch, curled up with a glass of wine in her hand. The TV flickered to life, and a documentary about a serial killer, Lucas Archer, filled the screen. She was always drawn to these kinds of stories. Morbid curiosity, an urge to understand the twisted minds behind such horror. The chilling recount of Archer's life made her skin crawl. They'd spent the first few minutes analyzing his childhood, his strange detachment from human connection, the subtle signs that had gone unnoticed by everyone around him. As they began describing his first few murders, victims plucked from the streets at random, each death meticulous and brutal, Sarah felt the familiar thrill of unease creep into her body. She shifted uncomfortably on the couch, her eyes glued to the screen. The host of the documentary, a stoic detective, described how the killer had gone unnoticed for years. He had blended in perfectly, never raising suspicion. People thought he was normal. He had fooled them all. "Isn't that the scariest part?" the detective said. "The fact that he was just like everyone else. It's impossible to tell who the monster really is." Sarah froze. The words hit her in a way she hadn't expected. A chill ran down her spine. She set the glass of wine down on the table beside her, the room suddenly feeling claustrophobic. The show continued, but Sarah felt herself pulled in. It was almost as though she could see herself in the documentary. The image of the killer, the way he had acted before the murders, before everything had gone wrong. It was too familiar. The way he had walked through life unnoticed, blending in. It reminded her too much of her own existence. She blinked and shook her head. It was ridiculous. She wasn't like him. She couldn't be. But then, what about those times when she had played things off? The moments when she smiled when she didn't feel like it, when she hid the true thoughts swirling in her mind, when she pretended everything was okay when it wasn't? How many times had she sat in a room with people acting like she was one of them, when in reality, she felt completely disconnected? Sarah's heart raced, trying to push the thought away. She was getting caught up in the story, in the narrative. The documentary was designed to provoke these feelings. She was just reacting to it, over-analyzing. The camera shifted to a mugshot of Lucas Archer. His eyes were cold and distant, hollow. He wasn't just a man. He was a symbol of darkness, of a twisted mind that couldn't be understood. But as the image lingered on the screen, something happened. Sarah felt a pang of recognition. His eyes, they weren't just cold, they were empty. And for the first time, she wondered if hers looked like that too. Empty. Like there was something inside of her that had gone missing. Something she couldn't identify but felt constantly gnawing at her. She glanced at her own reflection in the dark window beside her. It was late, and the outside world was a blur, but in the darkness, she could see it. The lines in her expression didn't feel like her own. She looked older, haggard. The woman staring back at her felt like a stranger, unfamiliar, like she was seeing a version of herself that she hid from the world. Her pulse quickened. "Stop it," she thought, shaking her head. She was just tired. It was just the late hour. But as the documentary continued, her grip on reality seemed to loosen. The lines between the show and her life began to blur. The victims in the documentary, strangers to the world, but to her, their expressions of terror felt personal. She saw herself in their fear, in their helplessness. And then there was the moment the killer's last victim was revealed. The victim that had been the key to his downfall. The one who had unknowingly given the police the evidence they needed to finally catch him. The way the victim's face had been shown on screen, a final shot of terror frozen in time. struck Sarah like a hammer. The woman had an uncanny resemblance to herself. She thought, just for a moment, was it possible? Could I have been the last victim? Could she too become part of a story that she was never meant to be in? She shook the thought away. Then a darker thought slithered into her mind. What if the killer was someone like me? The thought was dumb. She wasn't a murderer. She had never hurt anyone, never crossed that line. But what if I had? She turned her gaze back to the TV. The detective had begun discussing how the killer's obsession with control had played out in the final days of his reign. How he had almost wanted to get caught. How, somewhere deep down, he was begging for someone to see through the facade, to understand the depths of his madness. Was that it? Was it possible? Had Sarah herself been playing a role in some grander narrative she didn't fully understand? Could it be that in all her quiet, calculated movements, her moments of emotional manipulation, the white lies, the things she thought she could get away with, she had slipped into the same patterns as the killer? She had always tried to bury it, suppress it. But now she wondered, was it buried so deep that she couldn't even recognize it? The more she thought about it, the more unsettling it became. Her mind was spiraling, and with every passing second, she felt herself slipping further into the documentary. She wasn't just a viewer. She was a willing participant. Her breath caught as a new segment played. The camera panned to a neighborhood, a street Sarah didn't recognize, a dark alleyway, the sounds of footsteps echoing in the quiet night. She felt a pang of dread. The footsteps were hers. The camera zoomed in on the shadows, and Sarah's pulse raced. It was as if the killer was following her, tracking her movements. The air around her seemed to grow thicker. She couldn't breathe. She wanted to scream, but the scream lodged itself in her throat. No, she was just watching this. She wasn't part of it, but the truth began to twist and curl inside her, like a poison filling her veins. A woman stepped into the light in front of her. The woman's face was pale, haunted. The eyes were her own. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the one being hunted. She was the one everyone had been looking for all along. Her hands trembled. The realization hit her like a freight train. The last victim was herself. In her obsession, she had become the very monster she had been watching on the screen. The darkness from the alley suddenly felt like a prison. She could hear her own heartbeat thudding in her ears. A warmth surrounded her body. There was no escape. And in that moment, Sarah understood something terrifying. The killer was never just Lucas Archer.